Hello everyone. I wanted to just talk a little bit more about the models from a company called Wartime's Journal based in California. You may recall about a week or so ago I uploaded some videos about the Battle of Santiago de Cuba, and for that I used models from Wartime's Journal, and I showed a video of the unboxing of the models when I collected them from the post office. And at the time I mentioned that I had previously purchased a couple of models and I was impressed by them, but I hadn't got around to painting them, and I am totally hooked on their models now. I think they're fantastic. So I got those two models out and painted those, and I've also purchased some more and painted those up. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about those with you. So this model here is HMS Queen Elizabeth 1916. Zoom in a little bit so you can get an idea of the size. The model itself is about 4.5–5 inches. The base makes it a little bit larger than that. And I found out from perusing the website recently, one of the things that I remarked on was how much I liked the fact that the sculpts, that they're prototype plastic models, but the sculpts themselves are so crisp and beautiful, and the detail on them. And one of the nice features about them, which is very popular apparently with their range, is that the guns don't have any overhang on them. So the gun barrels themselves are literally proud of the deck. Now, one thing I've discovered is that if you see the tripod there, it has got a filling, so it's a sort of solid mass, but you can actually request for that to be, sort of unfilled, so you just get the three stands of the leg, and you can see straight through those. They send the models, unless you actually specify, like this, with the tripod filled in but the gun barrels not. But if you're worried about fragility or anything like that, you can actually ask for the gun barrels to have an overhang so that they're less likely to snap off. Or conversely, you can ask for the tripod to be hollowed out, which will make it a little bit more easy to damage. So I think in future I'm actually going to ask them, because they come so nicely packaged and safely packaged, to take that space out on any models. It doesn't worry me too much, but I'm so impressed by the way that they cast these models that it's worth taking advantage of the fact that you can do that. So anyway, HMS Queen Elizabeth. I've painted it largely with Vallejo greys. I used dark sea grey, which is 70991. Washed it with a kind of mixture of black and soft grey washes, so that it's not an entirely black wash, and then highlighted with medium sea grey, which is 70870. I did have a little bit of a wonder about what kind of shades of grey to use. I found a website that was talking about the restoration of HMS Caroline, which is in Belfast, which is one of the sole surviving vessels from the Battle of Jutland. It was a light cruiser, I believe, and they're trying to get that ready for the anniversary of Jutland, which is coming up in a month or two. And they stripped it down, the paint on it, and found literally 38 different shades of grey as they went through the layers. So finding an accurate depiction of the right shade of grey is virtually impossible, and anyone's guess goes really, especially as we don't have any colour photographs of the ships at the time. It's all black and white photography. So I don't think you need to get too hung up on the colours that you use on these ships. Just go with what seems right for you. But the upper deck colour, which I've painted as a kind of maroon, I think you can see that there. I copied from this Osprey book here, British Battleships 1914 to 18, the Super Dreadnoughts, which is volume 2 of their series on, and there you can see this is HMS Thunderer, but it's a top-down view of that dreadnought, and it's got a similar colour for the upper decks, so I copied that. But again, I think really anyone's guess goes in what those colours were, so I'm not going to get too OCD about the right colours for it. And another thing on this one, you'll notice, I don't know if it's my imagination or just because they have presented the picture in sunlight, you can see shading on it there. Whether the tops of the turrets were a darker grey or not, I found plenty of other illustrations where gun turrets are the same shade of grey as the main body of the ship, so I haven't got too thought about that, so I painted that. I left the tops of the gun turrets the same kind of colour, but I did sort of use, I didn't use white, I used a sort of very light grey, foundry, Arctic grey shade for the lifeboats, just to make them stand out a little bit more. And other than that, there wasn't much detail. The decking I've done in the same way as I described in a previous video for the American and Spanish ships of 1898. And the sea, I've kind of experimented a little bit with that again. It's a bit too blue, I think, for my liking, but I've tried to use a few of the transparent colours and get little bits of green and so on, and the transparent white watercolour paint for the foam. Again, I'm quite pleased with the way it's turned out. So that's that one. That was one of the ones that I bought originally. And the other one was a German ship. This one here, which is the SMS Kaiser, which is a nice model. Slightly smaller than the other one, but not much. It's probably about just over 4 inches in size and in length. And for that one, again, I used this as my reference, which is another Osprey book, German Battleships 1914 to 18, Volume 2, which includes the Kaiser class. It's Kaiser, Koenig and Bayern classes. So they actually have a top-down and a profile image of the Kaiser itself. And again, on that one, the turrets definitely are black, and I've found references to that in other sources, so I have painted the tops of the turrets black on this ship. They have these white circles on the fore and aft turrets, and I did find in Wikipedia, which I know is not the best of sources, but it's fairly reliable for amateurs like myself, that these white circles weren't used until 1917, but I've seen them on lots of depictions of this vessel and other German vessels in 1916. So I painted them on, or did my best. I hate painting circles. Can never get... I almost thought about making up my own transfers or something, but I've hand painted them, and they're not too bad. They'll do. And for the kind of upper deck colour, I've used a sort of hull red sort of colour. I'm going to come on to that and show you that a little bit later, paint I used for that, but that was based on this same image where they seem to have again, it's hard to tell whether they're trying to show it in sunlight and how red that actually is, because you can see on the colouring on the hull they have got sort of slightly orangey highlights on the hull, so I didn't know whether that was meant to be the deck in sunlight and it's slightly orangier than that or not. And also underneath the chains, the anchor chains, they have these sort of rungs to protect the deck, I suppose. So I had a go at trying to get those on. So there we are, and the greys I use for that, I've got some. I've got 2 boxes of life colour paints for the World War II German Navy, and as I was saying earlier, grey is grey, so I thought they would do for German ships of an earlier period. So I used these ones here are mainly for submarine U-boat colours, so I didn't touch those, but they've got some useful colours in there for future projects. But I used a combination of Dunkelgrau DKM 51 and Hellgrau Silbergrau, which I think is silver grey, as a highlight. And again, I washed it in a kind of very sort of lightish grey wash, so that I didn't darken it up too much. My impression is that the sort of German ships were slightly lighter grey, but again, it's not worth beating yourself up with if you get it wrong. Just paint it how you like it. So those were the 2 models that I've had sitting around unpainted for a while. But I also put in an order for some more models, and I acquired this one here, which is HMS Chatham, but I've painted it up as HMAS Sydney. Naval buffs will probably know what's coming in a moment. So this is a cruiser of the HMS Chatham class. It's about 3.5 inches long, and Australian ship. And I have found some black and white photographs that show HMAS Sydney with some white bands at the top of the funnel, so I put those on to portray it as she was in 1914. No bare deck surfaces, so all portrayed as plank, and fairly easy model to paint up. I used the same greys as I had on HMS Queen Elizabeth, so slightly darker grey than the German vessel that I just showed you. But quite pleased with that, and no surprise to you who know the history of HMAS Sydney. This is SMS Emden, the surface raider that was in Graf Spey's Pacific Squadron, that had such a notable career and came to grief eventually in the Cocos Islands when HMAS Sydney surprised her while She was there trying to destroy a telegraph station, and she put up a good fight, almost won the battle. It was one of her earlier hits on the... She managed to get in close to the Sydney, which was a big mistake from the Sydney's point of view because they had more powerful guns. And one of the Emden's early hits hit the bridge and the shell didn't explode. Otherwise it would have taken out the entire command structure, and Emden would almost certainly have either escaped or won the fight, but in the end she was destroyed. And this one I painted with the same greys as the Emden. The bare upper decks, Gavin, if you're watching, you'll remember that you mentioned about how they had stripped the planking from the Emden in order to prevent fires. As far as I can find out, they only did that on the upper and sort of mid-deck areas, and I was trying to copy a colour scheme that I found in this ages-old magazine, which is Model Boats of August 1994, and they've got a Dean's Marine lovely model of the Emden. An article on that. This is a massive model, but you can see there, I don't know what it looks like to you, but those colours to me look like a sort of green. But when I actually read that, so I painted my model in a sort of dark green. I think if I remember I used Foundry Chasseur Cheval green, the 3 shades of that. But reading this article now, it sounds as though it is supposed to be bare metal. Let's see if I get it. The iron deck, this was not spray but brush painted. That means that you painted the model by brush painting, and the colour was that of exposed steel. But as I say, that doesn't look like exposed steel to me. That looks more green, so maybe I made a mistake, but I'm not going to get hung up on it. I'm just going to leave it as it is, and I'm going to have the game playing the Emden versus the Sydney and see how I get on with that. So as well as purchasing those, I couldn't resist also buying 3 models representing sinking, capsized vessels. These are all representations of Russian pre-Dreadnought vessels, so I just like the idea of having markers to represent capsized and sinking models, because that aspect does come into the rules in the rules that I use, Sea Creek 5, but as I've come to expect now with Wartime's Journal, they are accurate representations, so again, if you got too hung up on it, you'd spot immediately that they were pre-Dreadnought Russian vessels and not appropriate for anything other than the Russo-Japanese War, say, but I'm going to use them anyway, just as markers. Nicely moulded, again, as you'd come to expect, with the gun barrels clear of the deck. The one thing I did notice is probably stretching Wartime Journal's capabilities too far, is that a lot of the propeller blades don't exist really. They've either failed in the moulding process or come off with handling. So they haven't got all the blades on the propellers, but not a big problem for me. That one there, I don't know if you can see, is missing one of the blades. But I like those, and it'd be nice if they did some more models for later periods, but they probably don't sell that many. How many people want to buy sunken ships? So I'm just going to use them as generic markers. That's about it really. I've got plans on, I'm definitely going to carry on buying models from them, and I've got plans of what to do next, but one thing I have noticed with their range is that they're constantly bringing out new models. Virtually every time I go to their website they seem to say this is now out, that is now out. But if you want to actually, it turns out I was quite lucky to find all the models to do the Battle of Santiago de Cuba, because if you want to restage a historical war game, you're a little bit hard pressed to get all the ships that were at any of the battles that I've investigated. Let's put that back on the table just so you've got something to look at. But I was thinking I might do the Battle of Coronel, which was in November of 1914. And they've got some ships, but they've not got enough by far. They haven't got the Scharnhorst or Gneisenauer on the German side, and they haven't got HMS Glasgow, which was a Bristol class cruiser, but they don't do HMS Bristol, so you can't therefore represent that model as HMS Glasgow. And so the same thing goes for the Battle of the Falklands, which took place slightly later. The Glasgow fought at that, so as did the Scharnhorst and the Gneisenauer. So you can't do the Falklands. So I was thinking maybe the Battle of the Dogger Bank, and same thing goes for that they've got some of the models to represent the ships that were there, but not all of them. I did write it down what was missing. To the best of my knowledge, that's the case anyway. I certainly can't find them in the list. Maybe I'm just not looking in the right place. Yeah, the Blucher is missing from their list if I wanted to do the Dogger Bank. And it goes on like that. And then I thought that there's another famous what-if scenario called the Trubridge Decision, which was a battle that didn't happen in the Adriatic. And the Germans, before Turkey entered the war, the Germans sent two warships, the Goeben and the Breslau, to Turkey, and the British were trying to intercept them. And there was a squadron of armoured cruisers under the command of Admiral Trubridge, who could possibly have intercepted them and decided that he didn't. His ships wouldn't have stood a chance against the Goeben. They were outclassed by her, and so he didn't pursue them. And a lot of naval war games try to reenact the scenario of what would have happened if he had managed to catch up with them or had decided to engage with them. And Wartime's Journal do models for the Goeben and the Breslau, but they don't do any of the armoured cruisers. There's one called the Black Prince, the Defence, Duke of Edinburgh. What was the other one? Again, I did write it down somewhere. Yeah, here we are. The Warrior. None of those in their list at the minute, but it would be nice to see those. And so it went on really. So I think I'm just going to have to buy models and stage kind of hypothetical fights between them rather than trying to restage a historical battle. And I keep my fingers crossed that their range extends, because they are superlative. I really think, having found these, I've got no desire to move on to anyone else's models. And they do all these ships in a huge variety of scales. Some they do in 1/1000th scale. They're pretty hefty price on them. The largest scale that seems to be common to all the models is this scale, which is 1/1500th scale. but you can go down to, I believe, 1/3000th or something, so you can buy them in much smaller scales. I'm not sure what the detail on them is like, but I think this is my this is the scale for me, definitely, because I like to see a little bit of detail on the models, and I enjoy painting them up. So there we are, just thought I'd show you that. Thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you on the next video. Bye for now.